The billionaire was already halfway out the door, his security team flanking him like a wall of iron, and the finality of it hung in the air like smoke after a fire. He had just bought the restaurant's mortgage solely to shut it down because the service was that bad, and now the manager was hyperventilating. The chef was praying, and the entire dining room was dead silent, as if even breath might make things worse. It was over, but then a quiet, trembling waitress who hadn't said a word all night stepped into his path, and she didn't apologize in English. She didn't beg for her job. She simply looked him in the eye and whispered 6 words in a dialect so rare, so specific to his childhood home that the billionaire froze as if he'd seen a ghost. What she said didn't just save the restaurant, it unlocked a scandal that would bring down an empire. Hours earlier, the humidity in the kitchen of the Gilded Oak had been enough to wilt lettuce in seconds, but it was the atmosphere of sheer terror that truly made it hard to breathe. Hannah Dawson adjusted her apron, rubbing at a stubborn smudge of truffle oil on her cuff, telling herself to stay invisible, to survive. She had been working here for 3 weeks, 3 weeks of invisible labor, 3 weeks of being screamed at by Gavin Mercer, the general manager who wore cologne that smelled like desperate ambition and stale cigars. "Table 4 is empty," Gavin hissed, snapping his fingers in Hannah's face, his breath sharp and impatient. "Why is table 4 empty? Do you know who is sitting at table 4 in 5 minutes? Hannah kept her eyes down, because eye contact only made it worse. "Mr. Almanzar, sir." Tariq Almanzar, Gavin corrected, his face flushing a blotchy red. "He owns half of Dubai's shipping lanes, and he's currently in a mood that could strip paint off a wall. If his water glass drops below the halfway mark, you're fired. If he has to ask for a menu, you're fired. If you breathe too loudly near his falafel, Hannah, I will personally ensure you never work in this city again." Hannah nodded and reached for the pitcher of filtered ice water, steadying her shaking hands. She needed this job. Her student loans from her linguistics degree were drowning her, and the medical bills for her mother's dialysis were piling up on the kitchen counter of their tiny Queen's apartment like snowdrifts. She didn't belong in this world of velvet ropes and $200 steaks. She belonged in a quiet library or back in the field translating documents. But translation work was sporadic, and the Gilded Oak paid tips that could keep the lights on. At 8 p.m. sharp, the heavy oak doors swung open and the restaurant went silent. Because it wasn't just a man entering, it was a weather system. Tariq Almanzar was taller than he looked in the tabloids, wearing a bespoke navy suit that cost more than Hannah's entire education. And he didn't walk, he glided, flanked by 2 security guards who looked like they chewed gravel for breakfast and a nervously looking British personal assistant clutching a tablet. Gavin practically sprinted to the door, bowing so low it looked painful. "Mr. Almanzar, an honor truly. We have the private alcove prepared." Tariq ignored him completely, walking past the manager as if he were a potted plant before taking his seat at table 4. He didn't look at the menu, didn't look at the decor, he looked at his watch. "Whiskey," Tariq said, his voice deep, growly, carrying an accent that spoke of elite boarding schools in Switzerland, mixed with the hard edges of the Gulf. "Blue Label, neat. And tell your chef, I want the lamb. If it is overcooked, I am leaving right away." "Yes, sir," Gavin squeaked, already snapping his fingers at a waiter named Kevin. "Get the whiskey, Hannah. Bread now." The disaster unfolded in slow motion. Kevin, who usually coasted on charm and good looks, was shaking so badly it was visible from across the room. He carried the crystal tumbler on a silver tray, but as he lowered it, his hand trembled and the glass slid, not shattering. That would have been too loud, but tipping just enough to send 3 Oz of expensive amber liquid cascading directly onto the lap of Tariq Almanzar's pristine navy trousers. The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Kevin turned pale white. "Oh God, sir, I'm so sorry." He reached out with a napkin, and it was a fatal mistake. "Do not touch me," Tariq said, and though the volume wasn't high, the tone was absolute zero. He stood slowly, the whiskey dripping from his suit jacket onto the floor, and looked first at Kevin, then at Gavin, who appeared to be having a cardiac event. "I was told," Tariq said, his voice echoing in the silent room, "that this was the finest establishment in London. I see now that I was lied to." "Mr. Almanzar, please," Gavin begged, hands clasped together as if in prayer. "We will pay for the suit. The meal is free. Please, let me." "You will do nothing," Tariq snapped, throwing his napkin onto the table. "I am buying this building tomorrow, and the first thing I will do is fire every single incompetent person standing in this room. My lawyers will call you." Then he turned on his heel, and his security guards pivoted with military precision as he strode toward the door, leaving behind a room full of people who felt their livelihoods slipping away with every step he took. It was over. and the staff watched their livelihoods walking out the door as Gavin sobbed quietly. Kevin stood frozen, and Hannah remained by the service station clutching a basket of warm bread, watching Tariq storm toward the exit. Seeing the tension in his shoulders and the specific way he clenched his jaw wasn't just anger. She had seen that look before years ago when she lived abroad with her father in the Levant. It was the look of a man who was surrounded by noise but heard no truth. She didn't think, she didn't calculate, Sidi Inishakana said, her voice soft but cutting through the room, and Tariq stopped with his hand on the brass handle of the exit door, not turning around immediately but standing there frozen, his knuckles white on the metal, because the language she had spoken wasn't just Arabic. It wasn't the modern standard Arabic taught in universities, and it wasn't the Egyptian dialect heard in movies. It was a specific rural dialect from the mountainous region between the borders of the Levant, a dialect spoken by less than a few thousand people, a dialect of his grandmother. So, you forgot your key, though he didn't have a key. It was a figure of speech from that specific village, a way of saying someone was leaving with unresolved business, leaving their heart behind. Tariq turned around slowly, his eyes previously filled with cold fury now wide with shock, as he scanned the room, looking past Gavin, past the weeping Kevin, landing directly on Hannah, who said that, he demanded, and Gavin, thinking Hannah had insulted the billionaire, lunged forward. You stupid girl. What did you say to him? Mr. Ullman, sir, I apologize. She's new. She's fired immediately. Get out of my sight, Hannah. Silence, Tariq roared, the sound cracking like a whip, and Gavin clamped his mouth shut, trembling. As Tariq walked back into the room, the security guards confused because they had never seen their boss stop once he decided to leave. Tariq walked straight up to Hannah, towering over her, smelling of expensive oud wood and the faint scent of the whiskey that stained his suit, looking at her name tag Hannah, then at her face, pale brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, tired eyes, looking like every other overworked waitress in London. But the words hung in the air. To color me, he commanded. Speak, and Hannah took a breath, switching languages again, deepening the accent, slipping into the rhythmic and moment-poetic cadence of the Alsho Mountains. The anger of a king burns the harvest, she said in Arabic, but patience waters the olive trees. The food here is not worthy of you, said he, but the hospitality should not die because of a spilled glass, and Tariq stared at her. His mouth opened slightly, then closed, looking as if he had been punched in the gut. Where are you from? He clear's throat asked, switching to English, his voice rough. You are American, British. I'm from here, Hannah said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. But I lived in the village of Dior al-Kamar when I was a child. My father was an archaeologist, our housekeeper. She raised me more than my mother did. She spoke like you. Tariq's eyes narrowed. Who was she? What family? The Haddad family, Hannah whispered, and Tariq took a step back, running a hand through his hair and messing up the perfect styling, looking at his security guard, then back at Hannah, the rage gone and replaced by an intense, predatory curiosity. Gavin, Tariq said without looking at the manager. Yes sir, I am sitting back down. Gavin looked like he might faint from relief. Oh, thank you sir. Thank you, Kevin. Get a fresh tablecloth. I will get the wine list. No, Turk cut him off, pointing a finger at Hannah. She serves me. Only her. If anyone else approaches my table, I buy the building and turn it into a parking lot. Do you understand? Yes, of course. Hannah, take care of Mr. Olmancer, Gavin hissed at her. Don't mess this up. Hannah felt the weight of the entire restaurant on her shoulders as she nodded and led Tariq back to table 4, clearing the wet tablecloth herself, her hands moving efficiently while she felt his eyes on her, analyzing every movement. And when she poured him a fresh glass of water, he didn't drink but leaned forward. The Haddad family, he said quietly. Did you know a woman named Leela? Hannah paused, the bottle hovering over the glass. Isla, she was my nanny. She taught me how to bake bread on the sea. Tariq let out a breath that sounded like a laugh but was devoid of humor. Leela was my aunt. She was exiled from our family 30 years ago for marrying a foreigner. We were told she died. Hannah dropped a water pitcher and it clattered onto the table, splashing water. But this time Tar didn't flinch, didn't yell, just stared at her with an intensity that burned. She didn't die, Hannah said, her voice shaking. She died 4 years ago of cancer in a small apartment in Beirut. I was there holding her hand. Tariq closed his eyes, and for a moment the billionaire tycoon vanished and a grieving nephew sat in his place, the mask of power slipping, but when he opened his eyes they were hard again. Calculating, you're not a waitress, he said. You are a loose end. I'm just trying to pay my rent, Hannah said, wiping up the water. I don't want trouble. Trouble found you, Hannah, Tariq said, and he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a phone. He placed it on the table. My business partner, Arthur Pellington, has been trying to seize control of my family's trust for months. He claims my Aunt Ela died without an heir, which means her share of the company worth billions reverts to the board, which Arthur controls. Tariq leaned in closer, his presence heavy, suffocating. But if Leela was alive 4 years ago, did she leave anything? A will, a letter? Hannah froze, because she remembered the old metal box Isla had given her before she passed. The box Hannah had kept under her bed in Queens for years, never opening because Isla said it was only for the day the wolves come. She gave me a box, Hannah whispered, and Tariq's eyes lit up with terrifying triumph. Get your coat, what? Get your coat, Tariq repeated, already standing, buttoning his jacket over the stain. You are done serving food. You are coming with me. I can't just leave. Gavin will fire me. Tariq looked over Hannah's shoulder at Gavin, who was watching them like a hawk, then raised his voice. Manager. Gavin scurred over. Is everything all right, Mr. Ullman? No, Tariq said evenly. This employee is stealing from you, Hannah gasped. What? No, I'm not. She is stealing my time, Tariq said smoothly. I am hiring her as my personal translator, effective immediately. Her salary is now 10 times what you pay her. She quits. Gavin's jaw dropped. She quits. She quits. She quits, Tariq said again, then turned to Hannah. Let's go. We have a box to open. Hannah looked at Gavin, then at the kitchen where she had scrubbed floors and cried in the walk-in freezer, and finally, at Tariq, a man who terrified her, but who was the only link to the woman who had raised her. She untied her apron and dropped it on the floor. I quit, she said. As they walked out of the restaurant, the wind outside felt different. It was the start of a storm, but Hannah didn't know that Arthur Pellington had a spy in the restaurant. Kevin, the clumsy waiter, wasn't just clumsy. He was texting under the service station. Target acquired. Almansa has found the girl. Prepare the team. The interior of the Maybach was silent, hermetically sealed against the chaotic London drizzle. The leather seats, soft as butter, a stark contrast to the hard plastic chairs of the bus Hannah usually took home. She sat pressed against the door, her hands clear as throat trembling in her lap, while Tariq Almansa spoke on the phone in rapid-fire French, his voice low and lethal. He hadn't looked at her since they got in the car. Freeze the accounts, Jean-Luc. All of them. If Pellington tries to move a single cent, I want to know. I don't care if it's legally impossible. Make it happen. He hung up and tossed the phone onto the seat between them, staring out at the blurring city lights. Where do you live? He asked without turning his head. Queen's Park, Hannah said. A basement flat on Heartland Road. Tariq tapped the intercom button. Queen's Park. Fastnun, the driver, a monolith of a man whose neck was wider than Hannah's waist, nodded, and the car surged forward. You are afraid, Tariq observed, finally turning to look at her. In the dim street lights passing by, his face was a landscape of sharp angles and shadows. You just kidnapped me from my job, Hannah said, finding a scrap of courage. And you think I'm part of some conspiracy, are you? I served you bread, Hannah snapped. An hour ago, my biggest problem was paying the electric bill. Now I'm in a car with a man who thinks I'm a spy because I know a dialect. Tariq studied her, and for the first time his gaze wasn't accusatory, but assessing. You don't just know the dialect, Hannah. You have the accent of the valley. You roll your R's like the farmers of Dare Al. You didn't learn that from a book. You learned it from love. Hannah looked away. Isla, she was everything to me. My father was always digging in the ruins. Isla was the one who braided my hair. She was the one who sang to me when the bombs fell in the distance. She was my favorite person, Tariq said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Before she left, before Pellington told us she had betrayed the family and run off with a thief. He wasn't a thief, Hannah said fiercely. Uncle Ibram was a poet, a kind man. Pellington lied to you, we shall see. The car turned onto Heartland Road, a street of narrow Victorian terraces, cars parked bumper to. Which one? The driver asked. The blue door, number 42, Hannah said, but, as the headlights swept across number 42, her heart stopped. The front door wasn't just open, it was hanging off its hinges, the glass pane in the center shattered. No, Hannah gasped. Mom is at the clinic, but stay here, Tariq ordered, signaling to the security detail in the SUV behind them. 2 men jumped out, weapons drawn but concealed under long coats. My box, Hannah cried, grabbing the door handle. Hannah, wait. Tariq lunged for her, but she was already out of the car, sprinting across the wet pavement, not caring about the danger because that box was the only thing she had left of the woman who raised her. She ran through the broken door, down the narrow hallway that smelled of damp plaster and now something else. Violence. Her apartment was destroyed. It looked like a hurricane had been trapped inside. The sofa slashed open, stuffing exploding like snowdot. Books were torn from shelves. Pages ripped out. The mattress overturned and sliced to ribbons. Every drawer pulled out and dumped, and Hannah stood in the center of the chaos with her hands over her mouth. They found us, she whispered. How did they find us so fast? Tariq stepped in behind her, his shoes crunching on broken glass, while his security team swept the room, checking the bathroom and the small kitchen. Clear, one guard said. But they were here recently. The kettle is still warm. Tariq looked at the destruction. His face darkened. Kevin, he muttered. The waiter, he must have sent a signal the moment we spoke. He turned to Hannah, grabbing her shoulders. The box, where was it? Did they get it? Hannah looked at the empty spot under her bed frame where she usually kept it. Empty, it's gone. She sobbed. I kept it right there. Tariq released her, his face twisting in frustration. Then it's over. If Pellington has the documents. Wait, Hannah said, wiping her eyes as she looked toward the kitchen. The intruders had smashed the plates and emptied the cupboards, but they had ignored the garbage. She ran to the small rusted bin in the corner, overflowing with coffee grounds and vegetable peeling. Hannah, this is not the time to clean, Tariq snapped. Isla taught me, Hannah muttered, digging her hands into the filth. She said, if you want to hide a diamond, put it in a dead dog's mouth. People don't look at what disgusts them. She pulled out a stained, opaque bag from the bottom of the bin beneath 3 days of trash. It was heavy. She ripped the plastic open. Inside, wrapped in layers of oilcloth, was a rusted metal tin painted with faded peacocks. Tariq stopped breathing for a second. That's it, he whispered. I remember that tin. She kept her sewing needles in it. Not needles, Hannah said as she popped the lid. Inside were papers yellowed with age, a flash drive that looked like it was from a decade ago, and a small velvet pouch. Secure the package, Tariq commanded, his energy shifting instantly from despair to military precision. We move now, sir. The head of security, a man named Garrett, spoke into his earpiece. We have company. 3 black sedans turning onto the street. No plates, Pellingtons, cleaners. Tariq growled and grabbed Hannah's hand. Do you trust me? No, Hannah said honestly. Good. Trust keeps you alive. Run. They didn't go out the front. Garrett kicked open the back door leading to a tiny walled garden. The rain was coming down harder now. They sprinted through the mud, climbing over a low brick wall into the neighboring alleyway. And behind them, the sound of heavy boots storming the front door of Hannah's flat echoed in the night. My mother, Hannah panted as they ran toward a waiting backup vehicle. They know where I live. They'll find her. My team is already at the clinic, Tariq said, pulling her into the back of a nondescript delivery van that had just pulled up. She is being moved to a private facility as we speak. I protect my assets. Hannah, I am not an asset, she said, shivering as the van door slammed shut and they sped away. Until we open that box, Tariq said, looking at the rusted tin in her lap. You are the most valuable asset in the world. The safe house was not a house, but a concrete bunker disguised as a mid-century modern architectural marvel perched on the cliffs of Dover overlooking the churning Black Sea. Tariq poured 2 glasses of brandy. His hands were steady, but his eyes were haunted. Hannah sat on a sprawling white sofa, the tin box on the coffee table between them like an unexploded bomb. Pellington is the executive of the Almansa Trust, Tariq explained, pacing the room. When my father died, I was too young. Pellington took control. He told me Illa was a traitor, so I wouldn't look for her. If she had lived, she would have had a controlling vote on the board. With her dead, Pellington had the majority. He stole your family from you, Hannah said quietly. He stole an empire, Tariq corrected. But money I can make. Time I cannot buy back. He gestured to the box. Open it. Hannah unfolded the oilcloth and took out the papers first. They were marriage certificates. Genuine ones. Leila Almansa to Ibram Curry. They were married legally, Hannah said, scanning the Arabic script. In Cyprus, before she was exiled. That means her share of the company wasn't forfeited, Tariq said, his voice rising. The exclusion clause only applied if she married illegitimately within the country. Pellington lied about the location. Hannah picked up the velvet pouch and tipped it over. A heavy silver ring fell out, bearing the crest of the Almansa family, a falcon holding a key. My grandfather's ring, Tariq Clear's throat whispered. He was wearing this when he died. Pellington said it was lost in the hospital. Isla stole it. No, Tariq's eyes burned with sudden realization. Grandfather gave it to her. He knew Pellington was a snake. He gave it to her for safekeeping. Hannah reached for the last item, the old flash drive. Tariq produced a laptop, a sleek Military machine, and plugged the drive in. A video file popped up, date stamp, 4 years ago. Tariq clicked play. The screen filled with the face of a woman, thin, her skin sallow from sickness, but her eyes fierce. Tariq's eyes, Lella Tariq, the woman in the video rasped. Her voice was weak, but the dialect was strong. If you are watching this, then my little bird Hannah has found you, or you found her. Listen to me closely. Tariq sank to his knees in front of the screen. Pellington did not just steal the company, Isla said. He killed your father. It wasn't a heart attack. It was poisoning. Monk's hooliganism. I saw Pellington switch the cups. That is why I ran. Not for love, but for life. Hannah gasped, and Tariq went rigid like a statue carved from ice. I have a son, Isla continued. His name is Omar. He is hidden, not with me. It was too dangerous. He is in the boarding school in Zurich under the name Omar Curry. He is the true heir. But you, Tariq, you must protect him. Clears throat. Pellington knows Omar exists. He has been hunting him. Leela leaned into the camera, tears streaming down her face. The code to the Zurich vault is the date I taught you to ride a horse. Do not fail us, Habib. The wolf is at the door. The screen went black, and the silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. He killed my father, Tariq said, the words coming out flat, devoid of emotion, which was far scarier than screaming. He raised me. He called me son, and he killed my father, Tariq. Hannah reached out, touching his arm. He was vibrating with tension. And Omar. Tariq stood up abruptly. I have a cousin, a 12-year-old cousin alone in Zurich. Suddenly the lights in the safe house flickered and died. The hum of the refrigerator cutting out. The heavy electronic locks on the windows disengaging with a sickening clack as red emergency lights bathed the room in a bloody glow. They're here, Tariq said. How? Hannah cried. We weren't followed. The flash drive, Tariq realized, slamming the laptop shut. It had a tracker embedded in the encryption. As soon as we accessed the file, it pinged a location. Pellington knew Isla would leave a digital trail. Garrett, the security chief, burst into the room, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. Sir, perimeter breached. They have a chopper, thermal scopes. We are outnumbered 5 to 1. We have to go to the panic room. No, Tariq said, grabbing the laptop and the ring. If we go to the panic room, they will just bury us in it. We need to get to the cliffside hangar. The chopper isn't prepped, sir. Then we prep it, Tariq yelled, grabbing Hannah's hand again. Can you run? I'm getting tired of running, Hannah said, kicking off her waitress sneakers. But yes. Good. They sprinted through the darkened corridors of the house as glass shattered in the main atrium and stunned. Grenades were tossed in. Bang. Bang. Clear's throat, white light blinding them for a second while gunfire erupted. Suppressed, spitting sounds like angry whispers. Down. Tariq tackled Hannah as a bullet chewed up the drywall where her head had been a second ago. He pulled a handgun from a holster at the small of his back, something Hannah hadn't even realized he was wearing, and fired 2 shots back down the hallway. A man shouted in pain. Move. They burst out onto the rear terrace where the wind was howling, whipping the rain into their faces, and the helicopter sleek black Europter sat on the pad 30 yards away. But standing between them and the chopper was a figure wearing a trench coat and holding an umbrella that seemed unaffected by the gale. Older, distinguished, with silver hair and a face like a kindly grandfather, it was Arthur Pellington, flanked by 4 men with assault rifles. Tariq, my boy, Pellington called over the wind. You look terrible. Is that whiskey on your suit? You murdered him, Tariq shouted, stepping in front of Hannah. You murdered my father, Pellington sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. Your father was weak, Tariq. He wanted to give the company's profits to charity to build schools. I saved the company. I built the empire that paid for your suits, your cars, your arrogance. I made you made an orphan, Tariq spat. And I can make another one, Pellington said pleasantly. Give me the girl and the drive. Go back to your penthouse. Forget you saw this. You can keep your allowance. Tariq looked at the armed men, at the chopper, at Hannah shivering in the rain and clutching the tin box to her chest, and he realized he had spent his whole life being the shark, the predator, but he had been swimming in a tank built by this man. Hannah, Tariq whispered without moving his lips. When I move, you run for the cliff edge. What? She whispered back in terror. The cliff. There is a maintenance chute, a ladder. It goes down to the beach. I'm not leaving. You have the proof, Turk roared as he raised his gun not at Pellington but at the fuel tank of the luxury SPORTS car parked next to the helicopter. Pedand fired. The explosion was a concussive wave of heat and force. the fireball rolling outward and knocking Pellington's men off their feet as Pellington stumbled back, losing his umbrella. "Run!" Tariq screamed, and Hannah didn't think. She bolted for the edge of the cliff, found the railing, swung over, found the rusted iron rungs of the ladder, and scrambled down into the darkness, the roar of the fire above masking her sobbing. She stopped 10 feet down and looked up. Tariq hadn't followed her. Through the smoke and rain, she saw him standing amidst the flames, his hands raised in surrender as Pellington's men surrounded him, rifle butts striking him down. "No!" she screamed, but the sound was lost in the crashing waves below as they dragged Tariq away. Pellington walked to the edge of the cliff and looked down, and Hannah pressed herself flat against the wet rock, praying the darkness would hide her. He stared into the abyss for a long moment, then turned away. "Find the girl," his voice drifted down. "She can't have gone far, and bring the boy to the warehouse. We have a family reunion to attend." Hannah waited until the tail lights faded. She was alone on a cliffside in the rain with no money, no phone, and the most dangerous evidence in the world tucked inside her shirt. She looked at the angry sea. "I'm coming for you," she whispered, the dialect of the mountains hardening her voice into steel. "You forgot your key," said, "and I'm going to bring it back." The English Channel was a black void beneath the hull of the ferry, churning with the same violence that roiled in Hannah's stomach. She sat huddled in the corner of the cargo deck, hidden behind a pallet of crate-packed auto parts, shivering in her waitress uniform stained with mud and dried rain, wrapped in a coarse wool blanket a sympathetic truck driver named Wed had given her. She had flagged way down 3 miles from the safe house, walking along the B-roads in the dark, and when he stopped, suspicious of a woman alone on the cliffs, she hadn't begged in English but had spoken to him in Arabic, identifying his accent from the rosary hanging on his rearview mirror. "Iraqi, I am lost and the wolves are behind me." Wed, a father of 3 from Leeds, hadn't asked questions. He drove her to the ferry terminal and smuggled her into his cab. Now, as the boat lurched toward Kalala, Hannah wasn't thinking about the cold. She was thinking about Tariq. She closed her eyes and saw him standing in the firelight, the gun in his hand, sacrificing himself so she could run. Clear's throat, the billionaire who had looked at her with disdain only hours ago, had become her savior. "The code to the Zurich vault is the date I taught you to ride a horse." Hannah pulled the rusted tin box from her shirt and opened it carefully. The flash drive was gone, left with tar, but she still had the papers and the heavy silver ring. She looked again at the marriage certificate. Leila Omar. She didn't know the date Illa taught Tariq to ride a horse. Pellington had the boy Omar on his hit list. If Pellington's men got to the boarding school in Zurich first, the true heir would vanish and Tariq would be killed. The ferry docked in Kalala at 4 a.m. and Hannah slipped out of Wed's truck, thanking him with a promise to repay him 1,000 times over. She had £50 in tips in her pocket and a diamond determination. She took 3 trains, didn't eat, slept in 10-minute bursts, clutching the tin box like a lifeline, and by the time she arrived at the Institut La Rosse, the most expensive boarding school in the world, nestled in the snowy Swiss Alps, it was dusk on the second day. The school was a fortress ornate iron gates, cameras, guards in sharp uniforms, and Hannah looked like a vagrant. She knew walking up to the front gate would get her arrested, so she walked the perimeter, the snow soaking through her thin sneakers, until she found what she was looking for near the service entrance by the kitchen delivery vans. She waited until a baker's van idled at the gate, and as the guard checked the driver's clipboard, Hannah Commando crawled under the chassis, holding on to the greasy undercarriage as grit flew into her eyes and the van rolled into the compound. Inside the grounds, she dropped and rolled into a snowbank she was in. She knew the boy's alias, Omar Curry. She knew he was 12. She blended into the shadows, moving toward the dormitory buildings. The campus was quiet. The students were in the dining hall. She peered through the tall, arched windows where hundreds of children of diplomats, kings, and oligarchs sat at long tables, and she scanned the faces, searching for Ila's eyes. Tariq Saizanda, sitting alone at the end of a table pushing peas around his plate, was a boy with dark curly hair, olive skin, and a melancholy set to his jaw that was a mirror image of Tariq's. Hannah didn't wait. She found an unlocked side door near the kitchen's scullery, grabbed a discarded blazer from a coat rack 3 sizes, too small but enough to cover her dirty uniform, and walked into the dining hall. A prefect stood up. "Excuse me, you can't be in here." Hannah ignored him and walked straight to the boy. "Omar," she said softly. The boy looked up, his eyes widened. "Who are you?" "I am a friend of your mother," Hannah whispered in the dialect of Dear Alam. "Emmy Bettany, my mother sent me." The boy dropped his fork. "My mother is dead." "She is," Hannah said, crouching so she was eye level with him. but her brother is alive. Tariq, and he is in trouble. Omar stiffened. Uncle Tariq, the man in the magazines. Yes, he needs us. But we have to go now. Hey. A teacher was marching toward them. Security. Hannah grabbed Omar's hand. Do you trust your mother? Yes. Then run with me. They bolted, and the dining hall erupted in chaos as Hannah shoved a trolley of dirty dishes into the path of the teacher, the metal screeching against the floor while they burst into the kitchen, slipping on the tiled surface before crashing out the back exit into the freezing night. Where are we going? Omar panted, his breath pluming in the air. To the bank, Hannah said, but first we have to survive the night. As they reached the perimeter fence, headlights swept across the snow-black SUVs, not school security. They're here, Hannah realized with a jolt of terror. Pellington's men climb. She boosted Omar up the stone wall and he scrambled over, falling into the snow on the other side, and she followed, scraping her hands raw before they ran into the dense pine forest surrounding the school, the beams of flashlights cutting through the trees behind them, slicing the darkness like lights. I can't run anymore, Omar cried after 20 minutes of trudging through knee-deep snow, and Hannah pulled him behind a large boulder, her body shaking as she felt herself freezing to death. She took off her small blazer and wrapped it around him. Omar, she said, her teeth chattering, think your mother taught Tariq to ride a horse? Do you know when? He looked at her, confused and terrified. She told me stories, she said it was on the day the red moon fell. The red moon, Hannah's mind raced, it was a metaphor. Isla spoke in riddles and poetry. What year? What season? I don't know, Omar sobbed. I want to go back. If you go back, they will kill you, Hannah said harshly, then softened. The red moon, a lunar eclipse, she racked her brain. A total lunar eclipse visible in the Levant roughly 20 years ago, July 2000. No, January 2001. Think, Omar, did she celebrate it? She said it was Tariq's 10th birthday, Omar whispered. Tariq was 32. That meant 22 years ago. Okay, Hannah said. We have the key. A twig snapped nearby and she pressed her hand over Omar's mouth as a man in tactical gear stepped into the clearing holding a thermal imaging scope. He turned his head, looking right at their heat signatures. Found them, the man spoke into his radio. Hannah scanned their surroundings. No weapons, no escape, just a rock and the element of surprise. Stay down, she hissed to Omar, then stood up slowly, raising her hands. Don't shoot, she screamed in English. I surrender. The boy is hurt. The mercenary lowered his rifle slightly, smirking. Clear his throat, easy job. Mr. Pellington will be pleased. He walked forward, reaching for his handcuffs, and when he was 2 feet away, Hannah didn't fight. She didn't punch, she did something Isla had taught her about the mountains. The ground is your weapon. She kicked the man's knee, not the cap, but the side, forcing his leg into a patch of ice hidden by fresh powder. He slipped, and as he flailed she lunged, not for the gun but for the radio on his chest, ripping it free and smashing it against the rock. The man roared, scrambling up and grabbing her by the throat, lifting her off the ground as Hannah clawed at his face, her vision spot. The man's eyes rolled back and he crumbled, and Omar stood behind him holding a heavy tree branch, his chest heaving. Hannah gasped for air, falling into the snow, then looked at the 12-year-old boy. He looked terrified, but his jaw was set. You have the blood, Hannah wheezed. Come on, we need his car. London. 48 hours later, the headquarters of Almansa Global rose like a glass needle piercing the grey sky of the financial district, and on the 90th floor the atmosphere was suffocating as the emergency board, meeting called for 900 a.m. began. 12 men and women in suits worth more than houses seated around a table made of petrified wood. At the head sat Arthur Pellington, immaculate despite the bruise on his cheek covered with makeup, and to his right sat Tariq Almansa, broken his left arm in a cast, his face swollen, his lips split, sleepless for 3 days. Wearing a fresh suit Pellington had forced him into, looking like a prisoner on death row. Ladies and gentlemen, Pellington began, his voice smooth as silk, thank you for coming on such short notice. As you know, Tariq has been going through a difficult personal crisis. The stress of leadership has taken its toll. The board members murmured. They saw the bruises, they suspected, but they feared Pellington more than they loved the truth. Tariq has decided to step down as CEO, effective immediately, Pellington continued, and he is transferring his voting shares to me to ensure the stability of the company. Tariq, he slid a document across the table, a Mont Blanc pen resting on top of it. Tariq stared at the paper transfer of assets. Sign it, Pellington whispered, leaning in so only Tariq could hear, or I send the order to Zurich. My men are tracking the boy's phone. It's only a matter of time. Clear his throat, Tariq's hand trembled as he picked up the pen. He had held out as long as he could, taken the beatings in the warehouse, refused to speak. But for Omar, for the innocent boy, he had to yield. He touched the pen to the paper. Ding! The elevator doors at the far end of the hallway chimed, and Pellington snapped at the security guard by the door. I gave orders for no interruptions. Handle it. The guard stepped out, and a commotion followed a thud. Then the double doors to the boardroom swung open, and it wasn't a team of commandos but a woman. Hannah stood there wearing a tailored black suit she had bought with the cash from the mercenary's wallet. Her hair slicked back, looking exhausted and battered yet radiant with fury, and holding her hand was a boy. I object to this motion, Hannah announced, her voice ringing off the glass walls. Pellington shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently. Security, get this trash out of here. Sit down, Arthur, Tariq rasped, dropping the pen as he looked at Hannah, and for the first time in days life returned to his eyes. Who are you? Asked the chairman of the board, an elderly man named Lord Sterling. I am the proxy for the majority shareholder, Hannah said, walking toward the table. As the security guards hesitated, there was something regal in her walk. There are no other shareholders, Pellington snarled. This is a farce. Leila Almansa is not dead. Hannah said she died 4 years ago. Yes, but her shares didn't revert to the board. They went to her heir. She gently pushed Omar forward. The boy was trembling, but he looked at the table of strangers with his dark, intense eyes. This is Omar Curry, Hannah said, son of Leila Almansa and the rightful owner of 51% of this company. Lies, Pellington shouted. Isla died childless. This is some street urchin, she picked up. We have the DNA test, Hannah said, slapping a folder onto the table. She had stopped at a private clinic in Geneva on the way, rushing the results with a bribe that cost the rest of the mercenaries cash. And we have something else. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the heavy silver ring, placing it in front of Lord Sterling. You gave this to Leila, Hannah said to the old man. Before she left, you told her to keep it safe from the wolves. Lord Sterling picked up the ring, his hands shaking. The Falcon key, he whispered. I haven't seen this in 30 years. He looked at Omar, then at Tariq. The resemblance was undeniable. And we have the Zurich vault, Hannah said, turning to Pellington, who went pale. We opened it this morning. It didn't just contain Leila's will. It contained the audio recordings she made before she fled, recordings of you, Arthur, discussing the dosage of monks for Turk's father. The room went deathly silent. It's a fabrication, Pellington stammered, backing away. She's a waitress, a nobody. I am a translator, Hannah corrected him coldly, and I am translating your future. It looks like prison. Tariq stood up and walked around the table, not looking at the board but at Pellington. You told me I was alone, Tariq said quietly. You told me I had no family. You tried to make me into you. Tariq struck him at Clear's throat. Wasn't a slap but a right cross that carried 30 years of grief, and Pellington crumbled to the floor. Police are in the lobby, Tariq said to the stunned room. Let them in. Then he turned to Hannah, ignoring the board members gasping and Pellington moaning on the floor, and looked at her before kneeling in front of Omar. Hello, cousin, Tariq said, his voice cracking. And Omar hesitated only a second before throwing his arms around Tariq's neck. Tariq hugged him back, burying his face in the boy's shoulder and weeping openly. Hannah watched them, tears streaming down her face. She had done it. She had delivered the message, and she turned to leave because her job was done. She was just the waitress after all. Hannah Tar called out, and she stopped. Where are you going? He asked, standing, one hand still on Omar's shoulder. Home, she said. I have to find my mum. I have to figure out what's next. You are not going anywhere, Tariq said, walking over and taking her rough, bruised hand in his. You forgot your key, he whispered, echoing the words she had once said to him in the restaurant. I don't have a key, she smiled weakly. You do now, Tariq said. You hold the key to this family. You saved us. 6 months later, the Gilded Oak was closed, and in its place stood a new establishment, the Olive and Stone. It didn't serve molecular gastronomy or tiny portions of foam. It served warm bread, roasted lamb, and dishes from the mountains of the Levant. And it was the hardest to get reservation in London. Hannah stood in the kitchen, checking the pass. Not in a waitress uniform, but in a chef's coat with her name embroidered on the breast. Chef, the sous chef called out. Table 4 is asking for the owner. Hannah wiped her hands and stepped into the dining room where warm lighting made the copper fixtures glow and the smell of za'atar and baking bread filled the air. At table 4 sat Tariq and Omar laughing, looking healthy and happy, wearing a school uniform from a prestigious day school in London, and Tariq looking younger, the shadows gone from under his eyes. No longer the CEO because he had appointed a trustee to run the conglomerate while he focused on the foundation he had started in his father's name. Is the food acceptable, gentlemen? Hannah asked, crossing her arms with a mock sternness. Terrible, Tariq grinned. The hummus is too smooth. I prefer it chunky. Then you can come back there and make it yourself, Hannah teased, and Omar burst out laughing. Don't let him, Hannah. He burns toast. Tariq reached out and took Hannah's hand, and for a moment the dining room faded away. We got the verdict today, Tariq said softly. Pellington got life. No parole. It's over, Hannah exhaled, feeling a weight finally lifting off her chest. Not everything, Tariq said, reaching into his pocket not to pull out a ring, because that was too cliché, and they weren't there yet, but instead drawing out a set of keys. What is this? Hannah asked. Dear Alamar, Tariq said. I bought the old Haddad house, the one where Leela raised you. It's yours for your mother, for you, whenever you want to go back. Hannah stared at the keys as tears pricked her eyes. You bought my home, you gave me back mine, Tariq said. It is the least I can do. He stood and kissed her hand, and it wasn't a billionaire kissing a subject, it was a man kissing his equal. But, Tariq added, his eyes twinkling, I hope you don't go back too often. I would miss my favorite chef. Hannah closed her hand around the keys and looked at Tariq, then at Omar, then at the restaurant filled with laughter and life. I think I'll stay for a while, she said. I have a lot of mouths to feed. She walked back toward the kitchen, her heart full, knowing she wasn't just a waitress who spoke a dialect anymore. She was the girl who spoke to lions and made them listen. Hannah didn't just save a billionaire that night. She saved a family, a legacy, and herself, proving that the most powerful weapon in the world isn't money or status. It's the truth spoken in the language of the heart. Tariq learned that a king is nothing without his people, and that sometimes the person serving your water is the only one who can save your life. Would you have risked your life to help a stranger who treated you poorly just because you shared a connection? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, courage, and redemption, please hit that like button. Share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories that bring the drama of real life straight to your screen. Turn on notifications so you never miss a twist. Thanks for watching.